Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Sunday. It was only last Sunday we were here. Well, we're back again. Anyhow, show today. First of all of those of you who live in Queensland who are heading off to the Mullaney show, it's happening this weekend, so it would have been yesterday, it'll be on today and again tomorrow, so enjoy the day up there. Unfortunately, we're not there, but hey, we're here on YouTube, so hope you enjoy what we do today. So anyway, what we have to do today, last week I had a little stuff up and I cut a trench in the wrong place. Now, and I didn't realise it until right at the end of the show. And I thought about just leaving it there and then offsetting the support in the box, but it won't look right, and we'll end up with two different sized drawers next to each other, and that won't look good, and then Pammy won't be happy, and then all hell could break loose. So I've decided to repair it.
Poor thing.
I was going to repair it anyway, but how I repair it is the important thing. So what we're going to do today is we're going to start by repairing that the trench, and then while the glue is drying for the repair, we'll then while that's happening, we'll continue on with some drawers. Now I'll show you the drawers in a minute. Now you may notice that I've got two tables set up, and part of the reason was that all the fencing and the height of the router bit are all set up to cut rebates and trenches. And so I've decided I'm going to leave the table as it is, and that's the beauty of our portable table. Leave that one there and then set up a second one, which I've done, which we'll be using today. So that's the reason we've got the two tables. Now that's going to come in handy anyway, because we're going to be making, as you can see, we've got 5 drawers, 4 drawers, 3 drawers. So there's quite a lot of drawers to make, and so we'll be swapping and changing parts for these 5, and then these 4, and then these 3. So it's easier to have two tables set up. So that's an advantage, and I'll show you how that works in this later. But we're going to leave this set up until such time as I'm finished cutting the rebate that I'm repairing. So that's our first task today. So let's get on with that. Okay, now the repair that I have to do, luckily, I better change to a different camera so that you can follow me around. The repairs to the case is up underneath there. All right, so it's way up underneath. So if I tilt that up a little bit, that's what I have to fill. And as you can see, it doesn't line up with my markings on the front of my box here. And I have to line that up because it's lined up with the one on the bottom. Now, by filling that, a couple of things. Number one, okay, it's a repair. It's not in a position where it's going to be seen very easily, basically because it's up underneath, and for you to be able to see the repair, you actually have to take the drawer out and look up underneath it, even if you knew it was there. Secondly, once I put the repair in, I'm going to cut half of the repair out because I've only slipped across 5mm too much. So it's only going to be 5mm edge of it to be will be seen at all. And if you're going to see that, you're not going to see it from the back because it's going to be covered. If you want to have a look at it, you've got to actually take a drawer out and then tip the cabinet up like this to have a look, see where the repair is. So as you can see, it's not in a position where it's going to be seen very easily. So I think that's the good part of it. The second bit is the hardest bit now is to repair it so that it looks reasonable. Even though it's not seen, I still want to make it look a little bit reasonable and fit it in with the rest of the cabinet. So.
And besides that, you don't do things by halves, do you?
Exactly. So let's pull this apart. Take all my shells out. Just put this aside for a second. You see, everything lines up except for this one, and that's the one I have to repair. So I'm going to fill that. Everything else is lined up beautifully, so I'm just going to fill that, and then I'm going to recut. As you can see, once it's filled, there's only going to be a small section of it showing anyway, even if you did look up under there, because the rest of it's going to be taken out when I recut the trench. Now, to repair it, this is the material that's left over from cutting my dividers. Now, I could just get a piece of that and just cut it off and fill it up, but that's not right, because what would happen then is we'd be looking at end grain on the filler piece, and that wouldn't look very good there at all anyway. So what I've done, so this is what it would look like if it was end grain showing. So you can see it just doesn't even fit, doesn't even match. It fits, it's fine, but it doesn't match very nicely. So I don't want to use that. This is the grain. So the grain runs this way, and so does the grain on our piece there. So what I did was I cut a piece of this, the same width as my trench, and then I cut it down the middle. I could have just put it through the drum sander and sanded it, but I cut it down the middle. And part of the reason I cut it down the middle is because I want a rough surface on the back of the piece of material that I'm going to fit into here. That way the glue is going to be a bit more substantial and stick quite well. So that is going to go into there. Now the grain sort of matches a little bit here and there. It's not perfect, but it does look quite nice, a lot better.
Actually, it does a bit, doesn't it?
It looks a bit better than the end grain that's showing.
Yeah, that's better.
Right? So that one will be discarded, and we'll do this one here, and I'll just fit that in there. And I've sort of tried to get the colours a little bit so that they match up a little bit. Reason being is I don't have an end of this to actually use an end piece to have the grain continuous. So that's something you need to think about when you're trying to repair something. So I need to round the end of it, so that needs to be rounded over on the end. Now I can go over to my sander and I can just round the end over. So what I'll do is I'll bring the box over. And just got to make sure I get the right end. This one here. Just give it a little test. Sides, so it's just a matter of testing it. I've got plenty of material here so that I can fiddle around a fair bit trying to get that to fit right. So a little bit more.
Yeah, you're in the shadow there, so we can't really see.
Oh, okay. Just a tiny bit more, if you're having to repair something, it's always a good idea to really make the effort to make it look nice. I need to be really careful because there's no support in that whatsoever at the moment because the grain runs along this way and I'm very thin there, so I've just got to be careful when I'm working on this. Okay, so the rest I'm going to do by hand, so back to my bench, and sanding block and a little bit of sandpaper. Now I'm not going to use a real coarse sandpaper because I don't want to take a lot off, so I've got a piece of 320 and my sanding block. And all I'm doing now is just trying to shape it so that it gives a nice clean fit in the end. Not too concerned about the right hand side because I'm going to eventually cut that out anyway, but it's this side here that has to be perfect. Nearly there, just a tiny little bit more off the corner. Just be careful of this when you're doing something like this where the grain runs that way. And that's pretty much it. Okay, so now we glue it in. Now, what I was going to do was I want to repair it fairly quickly, and I was just going to spray in some super glue and hit it with a fixer. But the fixer will stain the timber, and I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to glue it in with my PVA, with my tight bond, and just make sure I've got enough in there. The important thing to remember here is that brush, get a good spread of glue in there. Don't want too much in there, but it's got to be right up to the edge on that side there. Even though I'm going to cut this out. A little bit more. Anybody commenting on our process so far?
No.
Okay, let's put that in there. So I'll push it right up as far as it'll go. Now you need to be quick about this when you put this in because the glue see it's sitting up a little bit, which is perfect. So it's sitting up, so all I'm going to do now is just clean that off. When it dries, I'll let it sit for the show, and when it's dry I will, at the end of the show I'm going to plane that off and then I'll recut that that trench. There's no point in cutting that off just yet. We'll do that at the end. And that's a nice clean repair. Looks quite nice, it's fitting well. The furry bits are the furry edges of the top of the infill. So it's just a matter of waiting for that to dry and we'll go from there. Okay, so I'll put that aside. Sit that over here where it's going to get repaired. It's warm enough today for that to be able to repair by the time the show, by the end of the show. But in the meantime, what we might do is we'll talk about the drawers. Now, all of the drawers, what I've done with the drawers is I've cut the material for the drawers. And over in my corner here, I've got 3 of the drawer sizes. So they're the 3 drawer sizes. This is the bottom one, the middle one, and the top one, of course. There's 5 of these, there's 4 of those, and there's 3 of those. Right? They're all going to be dovetailed. They're all going to have a base recessed into them. And the recess will be 5mm up, so there's a little bit of support there. And as you can see, they're all going to be pretty much identical. When I've finished with the drawers, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a false front across the front of all of them, right? Now the false front's going to be 10mm thick, and what that will give you in the end, the impression of a hidden detail will be the blind dovetails. So all of those will happen across the front of it. Now when I do the front of the cabinet, what I want to do is I want to make sure that all of the drawers that are on the top here, all the little ones, they're all going to be only that big. The grain on the piece of timber that I use, I want it to match all the way across all 5 drawers. The one on the middle here, again, same thing, and the same with the 3 on the bottom, so that the grain matches up all the way across the cabinet, so it gives it a bit of uniformity to the whole thing. So we're thinking about that as we go. Can't do the fronts until such time as I've got the cabinet glued together and all the drawers made. So we're going to start on the drawers. I've taken the measurements from the cabinet as I've put it together. Right? I'm not going to put it together now because I've got to repair that little piece on the top of it. But I have got them all correct, and I've fiddled around. I've made a couple of drawers, and I thought one of the techniques that I use for making multiple numbers of boxes, you can imagine if I had my dovetail jig and I had all of these pieces that I need to cut dovetails in. So just imagine you've got 10 of them. Cutting the drawers is the biggest part of this. If you ask Fix It Fingers, ask him about his lot of drawers, how long it took him. He took a little while, but there was a lot of drawers in his. I've only got 12 drawers, but the thing that I've got is mine are all different sizes. So again, we've got to work with different materials. So if I was cutting this, what I would do is I'd set one there, I'd cut a dovetail, I'd rotate it up, cut my dovetail, put that one aside, and then I'd do this one, and then that one, and I'd continue through until such time I've done all 10 drawers. That's going to be an issue with time. So what I've decided to do is to show you how to set up so that you can cut multiple drawers at the same time. Now, I'm not going to do it on that smaller jig, I'm going to do it on the bigger jig. I just want to show you how to set it up, and then when we come to do it, I'll show you how it goes. It necessitates putting 2 sets of stops on our jumbo jig. Now, I'm going to cut those drawers and those drawers on the jumbo jig. So they're quite big ones. The little ones will be cut on the H10. So the dovetails are quite small on the little one. These are what it used to be called H20, which is now jumbo A. So setting the jig up, we set it up with 2 sets of stops. So here's how we go about it. Now what I did is I cut myself some test joints. That's my test joints. I've got the H on one end and I've got the A's on the other. So I know my jig is going to work. And I've got it set correctly so that I get a good fit. We take an end cap off. Okay, so I'm just taking the end cap off. The reason I take the end cap off is because I want to put 2 more slides in. Okay, so these are the slides that actually hold the stops in place. It's supposed to do that. Put the screws back in. And then we set up exactly the same way as we've got these ones set up. So we set up a blue stop on the left and a red stop on the right. Okay. Now, once you've done that, the next task is to number them. So I'm going to mark this as number 1. So just with a piece of chalk, that's number 1. Number 2. Okay. That's important. You must put the numbers on the stops. You can use a piece of sticky tape with a number written on it if you like. There's always another way of doing it. I just use a piece of chalk because all my pieces are going to have a piece of chalk on them. Now, these are the boxes that I'm going to set up to cut.
And these are the medium sized boxes.
This is the middle boxes, yes. Now, these are all my parts. Let's get some of this stuff out of the way. Leave that. So now what I've done here, I've got my parts and I've matched up my end pieces, the correct size for each of the boxes. That's the end of each of the boxes as well. Okay, so I've got 4 boxes to cut. Now, the reason I'm using the jumbo is the distance between the dovetails is different to the A10. This is my A10. And the distance when I'm cutting this, you can see this one here, I haven't set it up for anything at all. If I set my piece of timber on there, I've got this tiny little overlap occurring there, which doesn't it doesn't do anything for me, because if I cut half a dovetail here, I'm going to have a little overlap showing. It's going to be awkward to get a layout. If I put it there, I don't have enough material on the ends to actually support a dovetail. And when we put the piece of timber on the other side, trying to cut off a tiny little piece like that and fit that onto a dovetail is not going to work. So it's not going to work like that either, because I'm not going to get all of the edge of it taken off. So the distances and the spread of the joints for the A10 not going to work with this. But because we've got a different distance across our dovetails here, we're going to be able to get that set up quite nicely, and we'll get 3 dovetails. And when you look at the box, you can see the 3 dovetails actually spread out quite nicely across the piece, and we've got lots of support at the top and the bottom of the drawer. And that's what we're trying to achieve, plenty of support. So we line that up. And with my piece of chalk, I write number 1. Right. So this one here, number 1. These are my 2 end pieces. It's number 1 and number 1. Okay. Now, second drawer, let's try to do this one. On here, number 2. This side, number 2. 2 there and 2 there. Okay, so you may be able to get the picture. All of my number 1 components are cut on this set of stops. All my number 2s are set on this set of stops. So all I need to do now is just line up my 2 pieces of timber. And because we're doing this by eye, we need to make sure that our number 2 here corresponds with the number on our stop. Okay, that's both when we're cutting this piece and the end of them as well. So what it'll do, it'll speed up the whole process. So let's go through that process right now. I'm just going to put all my parts over to the side here.
So having discrete sets of boards for a numbered box means that you don't muddle up 1 and 2, the parts of 1 and 2, if you don't number them. And there will be, and can be, the very slightest amount of variation in the cut of where the dovetails and pins are actually cut from box to box.
Correct.
Even though you're very good at lining them up and just you've got a good eye, a minuscule change in the placement will mean that the parts won't sit evenly.
Correct, and you won't have little steps on the top and the bottom.
That's right.
Of your box. As you can see, the jig is big enough now. You can see I've got 2 stops on each piece. And what Pam was saying was very, very true. You need to make sure that all the parts match up to each other.
Yeah. They stay together as a discrete package, so to speak.
Okay, so there we are.
Set.
So we're set up, ready to cut 2 boxes at the same time. So again, what we're doing is we're reducing the amount of time it takes to make all of those boxes. Fix it. If you're watching, this could have been you. Isn't that cheeky? Okay, first task. First task. Scrub off your router bits. A little bit of oil. Over the last few weeks, we've had quite a number of people who are ringing up and purchasing new bearings
And grub screws.
and grub screws. This is the task that you need to perform at the beginning of a dovetail cutting session. I have a little bit of oil in there, not very much at all, just enough to help with the grip.
Sounds counterintuitive, doesn't it? But it works.
Yep. Now, I had someone ring me the other day saying they couldn't get their router bit out of, and I want to go through this with you, out of their router. Now, this is a new version of the router, and it's set up a little differently to the collet on the old version. With the old version, when you undo the thread, the router bit will come out. It doesn't with the new version, and this is the reason why. I just want to go through this and show you what the issue is. You might have to come into place here, Penny. Okay, so if I take the collet off, the router, in here there is a taper. Now I don't know if you can see that in there, but there's a taper in there, so it tapers down into the hollow like that. That's designed to take this little sleeve. That sleeve is tapered as well. Now what happens when you put that on there and screw it down, get my collet reducer and put it in there. Now put a router bit in there. Just keep screwing it until it comes down tight. And you never do this without a router bit.
Yeah.
When I do that up, what's happened is that the collet on the outside has jammed that little sleeve that I pointed out down into that taper, right? So when it jams it down into the taper, it actually locks and squeezes that sleeve in around the shaft of the router bit. When you undo that, your first undoing is actually undoing the thread. Right? The thread, all that's done is loosened off the collet cap. The shaft, as you can see, even though that's loose, the shaft of my router is still jammed into that sleeve. It's jammed into that taper. Now if you take the spanner the second time and undo it once more, what it's doing is the thread is actually pulling that taper or that sleeve out of the taper, which allows you to actually take your router bit out.
Right.
Okay?
So it's a two-part
So
movement.
it's a two-part move for this newer version of the Triton router. Do it up, of course, it's just one action, right? I hope that's been beneficial to you, because it's something that I'm asked quite regularly about. Why can't I get my router bit out? I've undone it. You may have seen me use one action on the older version. It's a different setup.
And this is on the new Triton.
This is the newer versions, and this is when you go and buy yourself a new Triton. That's what's going to happen. So have a little. What am I doing? I'm getting my height adjuster. So have a little think about it, have a little play with it. Don't turn the router on, of course, but have a little play with it and you'll get it right. Now, back to where we were. Cutting all the sizes. What I've done is I've made sure that all of my material was cut at the same time. So it's all dressed exactly the same. It's been sanded on the inside to 400 grit. It's been cut square, so it's perfectly square, so all my parts are the same. So I can use the same setup to cut all the boxes. So here we go. Just want to get this half a millimetre. So as you can see, it's tiny. There's only a tiniest little bit protruding there. What I want is the joints to stick through each other like that, so that I can face off each of the joints. For those of you who are experienced at it, you'll know what I'm talking about. Those of you who haven't done it before, then you might right, here we go. So all I'm going to do is cut all my parts. Ears on. Now when we take these off, rotate it in its same setup. You'll notice I had the face side mic pointing at my red stop. Just making sure it's tight. Just keep it don't swap them from end to end as you would if you were cutting uneven sided box. Rotate. Tip the jig over, just check to see that you're hard down on top of the stop, on top of the template I should say, and set up with the nice square on the stops. And cut the next one. You'll notice when I put my pieces of timber down, I put them down to correspond with my stops. That's a habit that I've got into. Now I know this is my number one. There's my number one anyway. I've got number one here, face side out, and the bottom of the box pointing at my red stop. And my number two, Same process. Just keeping an eye on the time so that I can actually spend a little bit of time working on the repair that I've done. Okay, let's put those over there. We'll cut the second lot. And so what I've done there is I've cut the dovetails for 2 boxes in one motion. Normally that's what I would do. I'd only do that one process to cut the 2 sides of the box. Now I've cut 2 of them at the same time. Now here's the thing. Now I've got 2 more boxes to cut. I'm not going to cut those at the moment. I'm just going to continue with these 2 and I'll cut the others later. When you turn the jig around, your numbers now are at the other end from where they were. So originally my 2 was down here, my number 1 was down there. When we put them up, just remember to keep these numbers linked up to that one there. So when I put that in there, number 2 lines up with number 2. Very important that you do it that way. If you don't, the minuscule measurement that you have changed on the 2 pieces, on the 2 boxes, and that means where you've set your stops up, is going to make a difference to the fit of your box. It should fit okay, but it might not align itself correctly. So I've got number 1 lined up with 1, 2, I've got number 2 lined up. Change my route a bit. Spanner. If you're going to buy a spanner to fit this collet, this one's just a cheap 24mm spanner. Pick them up at any either automotive store or the big green store, but it's easier than the little black one that comes with the router. adjust my height. Now always remember, use your opposing piece of material just in case you're using two different thickness materials. Okay, all set up, ready to go. Get my on. Just rotate over. And my number one is on that side. Number two on that side. So, in the time it's taken to build probably one case, I've built 2. Now it's just a matter of making sure that everything fits together. Now I'm not going to move any of that because I've got the other 2 boxes to cut as well. The only thing I need to do is make sure I get my height adjusted correctly. The height of my router bit. So on my number 2 parts, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and we should get a pretty good fit, I would hope. Box number 1. And box number 2. So you can see that it doesn't take all that long to actually build a number of boxes setting up like that. Now if you haven't got a jumbo jig, this is our jumbo series, if you don't have a jumbo you can do exactly the same thing with your standard jig. The difficulty with it is you're going to not be able to put 4 clamps on, like I've had 4 clamps on the whole of the jig, and I've had a bit of space between each to be able to work. But if you've got this set up with 2 here and another one here, you've got no room to put actually your center clamps on. So you may need to fiddle around a little bit to get your clamping system set up here in the middle where you've got 2 bits there. So it doesn't take a whole lot of effort to think it through, but you can do the same with the standard size jig as well. So have a think about it. If you're making one of these, something where you've got multiple drawers to do, or you've got multiple boxes to make, by all means, give it a go. See how you go with it. All right, now let's have a little play with our other repair. Drop this down out of the way. Let's see what we've got. Okay, so that's pretty nice actually. So what I'm going to do here, just clamp stop on the other side there.
Ooh, nice.
With my little plane, now this is a block plane. You can use any plane you like. The block plane will suffice. Okay, so all I've done is taken that off. Piece of 150 in my sanding block. was 150, just going to go down to a bit of 320. You can still see the piece because it's an odd bit of material in the middle of it. It's not exactly the same, but it's all the grains sort of match up a little bit. So the continuation of that bit of grain, that bit of grain to go across it. So I've got it close. Okay. Now it's just a matter of cutting off a little piece of excess. Okay, it's still a little bit loose. Okay, so while it's got the dust in there from the sanding, I'm just going to run in a little bit of super glue on the plate along this edge. Don't do this if you've had a couple of beers. I haven't had a couple of beers and I'm crooked. Just going to set that down. A little bit along here just for safety's sake.
Excuse me.
Just going to ask Pammy to do a little task while I go for another bit of material. If you just hold that there, Pammy. Push that down. Don't touch the glue and let me through. Yeah, so
I don't mind the circus act. What's this called? Multitasking.
This is multitasking.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, women can do that.
You can let go now. This bit out. A little bit to fix it. Back out with my 150. You don't want to sand too much off, otherwise I'll make the piece of timber. Too thin.
Right, let me have a look.
Okay, so we've got it.
That will dry back, won't it?
Yes,
It
and
won't
then
be
once I put a
noticeable.
finish on it, once I put a finish on that, you won't notice it.
Yeah.
So make sure I'm sanding with the grain. Okay,
Right.
that's our fixer. Now, let's shift this out of the way. We need to cut the rebate, cut the trench. We have a store called CDA Eastlake here, and they sell nuts and bolts and various other hardware bits and pieces for builders here in Coffs Harbour, and I believe there's a couple of stores elsewhere, like down south towards Kempsey and so forth. So I don't know if they've got them anywhere else apart from the mid-north coast, but they sell this mitre kit. Fix it. It's a glue.
So just Google that name, that proprietary name, Sudal.
Yeah, just Google it and see what you come up with. All right. Just got to pop things out of the way. This is, like I said last week, the problem with a small workshop is that you've got no space to put anything when you're building big bits of furniture. Okay. Now, what I want to do is I want to make sure I have lined up what I'm trying to do is just make sure that I've got everything lined up correctly. Okay, so what I did there was I started there, or did I? No, I started here and cut through there, or did I go the other way? You've got to remember which way I went. That's the way I went. What I did is I bumped it. I think. I've bumped it. I've got to get my setup right. So they're going to go like that. I think what I might do is I might square a line across there and make sure I'm working on the line. We're going to go over our 10 o'clock today. I want to get this done before we finish today so that I'm just lining up my markings. I'm going to put a little mark on here. You can't see it on camera, but
Let's have a look at that.
so what I've done there is I've just put a couple of markings where my trench is. All the other trenches are both lined up. I'm square on the ends. And what I need to do now is just make sure that my fence is lined up with the trench. Just checking. This is the reason we made the error last time, is because I didn't check. I bumped that the other day. Back attach.
Yep.
A bit more.
There. Brilliant.
That's better. Got it. Okay. So I have to cut this one. Right through to there, I think. Let me see. I'm still not right. As you can see, it is quite a fiddle. You can see it, my line isn't lined up because I bumped it the other day, and now I have to adjust it to fit. Okay. I have it now. Okay. Okay, fingers crossed folks. Fingers crossed it works. So I'm going to cut through there until I hit that, and then I'll stop. Okay, so ease on everybody.
Bring it over here, Cole.
Okay, so as you can see, only 5mm of that repair are on the edge there. Once I've sanded that up and polished that up, put a finish on it, you won't actually see that finish or that repair. But when you look now, you can see all of my trenches actually line up. They're all perfect. So everything lines up. So I'm really happy with that. So that's where we're going to finish it today. I'll reassemble later. unless you want it reassembled right now. I'll do it next week. What I'll do during the week is I will spend a bit of time and I will cut some more drawers and get those done. I hope that setup that I've done there is helpful to you. It'll save a fair bit of time, particularly if you're doing something with multiple drawers in it, all the same size. It's great. If you need to, what you'll do is cut all the drawers that fit that size, and then you'll do the others at different sizes. So same process, same technique. So that's it for today. It's been a little interesting. Hopefully you got something out of it. For the newbies who've come on board, please subscribe, and we'll let you know when we're back next Sunday. So next Sunday, don't know what's going to happen, but we'll have something assembled. We're probably at a stage where we'll have most of the drawers made. I'll do those off camera. There's no point doing them on camera because it's just the same process over and over and over again. And we'll just continue with what we've got. So have a good week, everybody, and I hope you all stay safe, and I will see you all next Sunday.